Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be discussing Monkey King, and the author's name is given as Wu Cheng'en, which I think is just the tradition, in the same way that Homer is given as the author for the Iliad or the Odyssey. We don't know too much about the author, but this is who it's been attributed to. So I think at the outset I should say that, well, you have this beautiful cover and this new translation, but it's an abridgment. And those are the two themes I want to start with, the notion of translation and the question of abridgment. So a lot of people get hung up on translations because they do power the way that someone reads something. If you read a bad translation being, let's say, something ponderous, difficult to engage in, then you're going to put the book down and you may not get as much out of it. Same thing with abridgment. One of the most famous abridgments I think I've probably grown up is The Count of Monte Cristo, which is 1,100 pages, and it's often abridged in something that's, say, 300 or 400 pages. And in both cases, I think there's a benefit. There's a benefit to a translation. So some people, they're very precious about reading translation. Oh, well, I can't read it in the original, so I can't read it. I think, why? You're going to miss out on so much great literature. And the same thing with the abridgment. Well, I don't want to read the abridged text. I only want to read the whole thing. And I respect there are certain aspects of those desires in me. I want to read oftentimes the closest translation possible because I feel that makes the text more authentic. Or I want to read the whole thing if I'm going to read it because I want to get the whole story, not a cutout. But given that this translation is a very fresh, vibrant, modern one, and that it's an abridgment of roughly a fourth of the size of the original, I'm coming out of this experience saying I welcome this abridgment, and I welcome this fresh and enjoyable translation. What is Monkey King? Well, it's part of Chinese literature, and it's part of Chinese literature in a way that few texts are part of their culture. And by that I mean, if I talk about Monkey King with an average Chinese person on the street, he or she is going to know elements of the story broadly. But it's not often like that with texts. For example, I was talking to French friends about Petit Prince, The Little Prince. Everybody knows that The Little Prince exists, though it's so short. A lot of people haven't read it. It's like maybe 100 pages in total, if that. And people have not read it. And they may not even know the storyline. Same thing in America. There's not really a text that all Americans have read and know very well. There may be texts that we've read in high school, but it's not something that has a cultural resonance to us. That's something we still draw on, that there are quotes in the culture that come from that text, a single text. And Journey to the West, also known as Monkey King, is one of those texts in Chinese literature. Now, obviously, I have my own interest, maybe not so obvious, the facial features, but I'm half Chinese, and so I have an interest in learning more about that side of my ancestry, ethnicity. And this book was another way for me to gain insight. I often say that books are ways for you to look into other cultures. The way that you, when you live with people in another culture, when you eat their food, when you accompany them to their cultural ceremonies, you really get an introduction to who they are as people. Well, when you read their literature, you do as well. And this book helped open up different experiences and different things that I've seen from my childhood and help me contextualize them more. So, for example, a ceremony that I've seen from a very young age has been putting fruit or oranges in front of Buddhist statues. So I would remember visiting my relatives when I was younger, and I would see that there would be some altar to Buddha in their house, and there'd be some oranges in front. And I remember being a kid, you see fruit, you want to eat it, and I would ask my mom, I said, hey, can I have the fruit? It's like, no. And of course, at that point I didn't realize, it's something that's been offered to idols. We as Christians are not going to eat such fruits. But I'm just a kid. I say, I see fruit. I want to eat fruit. And my mom's, no, you can't have it. And throughout the years, I've seen it when I visit Singapore. Of course, there's joss sticks, there's fruit that's offered, and I understood, I think, in an abstract way, okay, this is some offering they are making. But in reading this text and seeing these travelers make their way through different parts of China, I come to understand how tenuous the gap is between the spirit world and the real world. That in the Chinese culture, because, and keep in mind this ties in with this notion of the karmic wheel, this Buddhist conception of the world, in which you're always living different lives, and depending on how you live, you come out as different things. That there's an animation to every part of creation. That, okay, I may step on that snake, but maybe that snake was a bad person in his past life, or the snake may talk to you, or you may go to the spirit world and take a loan from offerings that someone has made in the material world. You can carry messages back and forth. You can sue people. There's a king who's sued in hell. In this, I wouldn't say hell. Maybe it's the underworld is a better text for it. There's bureaucratic mistakes that are made in hell, which leads someone to be killed sooner rather than later. He then demands to see his file. Oh, sorry, there's a mistake here. You've got 8 more years. Okay, we're going to send you back. There's just a playfulness and an interchange between the spirit world and the material world that there's no difficulty in communicating between these two worlds in this culture. And I think I see that played out more in other conversations. I think very recently, this would have been last year, I was with my family in Singapore, and we were visiting Malaysia, and our driver was telling us, we had stopped somewhere and we were just having a coffee, and he was talking about someone had put a curse on him and that he had to try to and I was trying not to, I'm laughing now, but I'm telling you that I didn't laugh when he was talking about it. I just thought, okay, let me listen, let me learn. And there is a deep belief in how these spirits can operate, that an evil spirit can curse you, and that you need to find a way to lift this curse. And this is the world it's not a world of ancient history. This is a world that many ethnic Chinese still live in today. And reading a book like this can help give you some insight into the way that they see the world, the way that they understand things. And again, I'm not saying that all Chinese think this way. Before all police show up in the comment section, what I'm saying is that some elements of the Chinese population do still think this way, as represented here in the text. And this can give you an insight into the overall worldview of the Chinese and how they think about life in general. What else are you going to see here? Well, I haven't talked too much about the plot of the story. You have this monkey that has been created. He's called Sun Wu Su Kong, the monkey who gives himself to emptiness, something along those lines. And he is a misbehaving monkey. He has to be punished by heaven at some point, and part of his punishment will be to lead a Buddhist priest to the West so that they can retrieve some sutras, some sayings of enlightenment, and bring them back to help people become more enlightened and go through a journey of enlightenment themselves. So there's this theme that we know of in literature of the journey. So what do you learn on a journey? Who do you meet on a journey? What are the lessons that you take? What are the things that befall you? But there's also a spiritual journey here. How do each of the characters grow themselves? There are different people who accompany Sandy and Pigsy, are Wu Su Kong's companions, who are helping the Buddhist priests navigate this world. But there's also a savage critique of Taoism and Buddhism, and a critique of rulers. It's a bold book, and in this translation, particularly in this New Penguins one, I'm going to give you the name of the translator, Julia Lovell, does just a fantastic job of bringing this text to life in a way that is very fresh and modern, but it gives you a sense of how fun and playful the text is. It sings, I think, the way that the text does. And there's a little monkey on the back as well. So, I Can't recommend this book enough, especially in this abridged version. It's not long, maybe 300 some pages. The translation is wonderful, and if you'd like to pick up a copy of it, there'll be a link to it in the description below. Also be a link to my Patreon if you'd like to support reviews like this. And if you're not going to support my Patreon and you're not going to buy the book, please feel free to hit the like button or hit subscribe or share this video with people who you think might be interested in a read a bit off the beaten path, but one that is hundreds and hundreds of years old, and that will give you some insight into another culture, particular culture that's going to play a much larger role in our lives in the coming years. For those who have not been aware, I think China is going to continue to grow on the world stage, for better or for worse, and we should know more about them. So, until next time, enjoy your reading.